The views and opinions expressed on this station do not reflect the owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
It's Thursday, the 11th day of November in 2020. Welcome to the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House and Lindo's. I'm JAMEL HARDTMAN, along with CARLA ZUILL. Thanks for making us part of your daily routine. If you haven't already, you know what to do. Share the link, start a watch party. Just get the conversation out there to your network. Another very important conversation, a good one for you today, as we have Laurie Shiell of the Center Against Abuse and Zakiya Johnson-Lord of out Bermuda. They'll be stopping by for what we all consider another very serious conversation. The Daily Play is a name that plays, so we're going to do geography. Look, I'm just going to say it because it's the easiest question that we've had on the Daily Play since we began this show. The easiest question.
Whatever. And today's the 12th. I know you had a good holiday. Today's the 12th. I don't want to go backwards. I want to go forward in time.
No, I didn't have a holiday. I mean, we don't have holidays, Carla. Don't try to make excuses for this. Don't try to make excuses for this. All right. So I have one thing written here. This is one of the most important conversations we've had in a while. Carla, yesterday, according to it was Billboard, right? Ticketmaster, who is like pretty much the leading concert promoter and where most people buy their tickets for concerts and events, various things. Basically, the title was Ticketmaster may require proof of COVID-19 vaccination for future concerts. Carla.
Listen,
Go ahead.
I'm out in the UK, and someone put an article in a British group I'm in, and it said proof of vaccination or proof of being COVID negative, because they want to avoid rapid testing at events. And remember, we talked about vaccinations day before yesterday, and I was like, it's kind of beginning to feel like the pressing on your neck almost. This, like, please stop with the wild faces. I've only been to a concert once. I'm not a concert goer. I've been to one. And to think as many people that go and you're going to say to them, they have to be vaccinated. That is crazy to me.
Well, Carl, is this any different from, let's say, you own a business, right? And you don't want, let's say it's in a beach destination, and you don't want people coming in with wet clothing or flip-flops or shirts off. If this, I know, one is inserting something in the body, but what I mean is if a private entity wants to ensure that you don't do something within their space, I mean, is that really wrong?
It's not wrong, but I think it's going to impact their bottom line, because totally different example. Look at Instagram, for example, and Instagram was going to take away likes, visible likes. And then what did they do? They did a backpedal because it will impact their business. I think for those people who are anti-vaxxers, they just won't go to concerts, or this sounds kind of sinister, but it could cause the emergence of a new business where people are selling fake results or something, or fake vaccination certificates. So I think it could impact their bottom line, or it's going to bring up another element of criminality.
I saw someone say, I can't find a comment, but someone was saying that I'm pretty sure that Ticketmaster looked at their bottom line and said, you know what, this is in our best interest. We're more likely to get people out if they know people are vaccinated, rather than just what's it called? They're more likely to have people in a space where they believe they're safe instead of not having them at all.
But I wonder if they consulted with artists. I'll just use Beyonce. Let's just say she's used to packing out a stadium with 60,000 people
Mhm.
and it drops to 30,000. Does that impact her bottom line? So are artists going to kick back at that?
I want to know what the audience thinks. What do you all think? Are you in favor? If this is, it's been reported, I don't know if it's necessarily final, but we got it on NJ.com. Ticketmaster may require proof of COVID-19 vaccination for future concerts. But let me just read to you what it says. Billboard reported Wednesday that ticketing juggernaut, which shares ownership with Live Nation, which is the world's leading concert promoter, is discussing plans that would require patrons to provide either proof of a COVID-19 vaccination or a recent negative COVID-19 test to gain entry to a concert. Obviously, this is just concerts. So if this happens with concerts, imagine where else and it can happen with. You feel me? So what are your thoughts? Do you agree with, would you get a vaccinate? Let's say it starts with airplanes, right? Let's say airplanes start requiring the same thing. Hotels, restaurants, what if they require the same thing? Now, someone said yesterday, well, I mean, countries have already been doing this and schools do it in many jurisdictions, right? I think the difference is with concerts, and again, we're dealing with something many people have not seen. This pandemic is something unheard of. But there are places that people just don't have any interest in going where they need that stuff anyway, where they need certain vaccinations. Go ahead, Carla.
No, a young lady this morning in London, she said, when she shared this article, she was like, if I can't walk, because it said in the UK they're thinking about, she put the Ticketmaster article in, but then she said, they said no pubs, no restaurants, no public transportation. And she was like, I don't want a vaccination. I'm prepared to walk wherever I need to be. And if I can't get there by a car, personal car, then I won't go. And I said to her, well, that's easy to say when you have all you need in a close circle. For me, my family is overseas. So as much as I don't want it yet, if it comes down to it, what if I have to rush home in an emergency? Would I be forced to take this vaccination?
Indeed. I get you. And I totally, I think your concerns are valid and shared by the majority at this point, right? I think a lot of people, James Birch actually says it right here. They're basically running a focus group in the media to see what the public feels about the idea, probably not plans yet. And that's what I got from reading that. And I mean, I don't know what other circles are saying. At least in the circles where we've had the conversation, it just seems like people oppose the idea of providing a vaccination or taking a vaccination and providing proof of a negative test when going to something like a concert. Robert Durham says, better to impact their bottom line rather than impact lives. So I don't know. I mean, I want to know from the audience. Obviously, we've had this question before about people, whether or not they are going to get the vaccination. Now that things are being added in, like for instance, I said to someone last night, it's hard for me to answer this question, honestly. I mean, I do hate being on the fence about issues like this, right? But truth be told, if it came down to my livelihood, being able to do the work that I love to do and providing for family and doing what like you legit love, and them being told that unless you have a vaccination, you can't do it, there's a decision that you have to make. Like, Carla, let's say this. Your sons play football, right? If you were told that, well, all players must now have vaccinations, I think you are very strong in your stance against it right now. But I do think, even though you may not, remove yourself from where you are, you may not change your mind. You would have to consider a lot if they said that.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up that analogy, because remember before I was saying that they were still having academies train and I was against it. And I'm saying to the boys, try not to get too close to other children, but that's inevitable in a contact sport. But I would have to have their way in too, because I think they're different. One would probably say no, because the oldest one right now is anti-vaccination to the hilt.
Mhm.
So he may say, you know what, mama, I don't want to play anymore. The
Mhm.
younger one, who is passionate, might be like, take my arm and jab it. But I'm not against it. It's just, I think it's too soon. But did you see in China where one of the parties, or I'm not quite sure of the politics, but how people were lining up like in long lines to get the vaccination that
Oh,
had been developed or which is being distributed by the government as opposed to by a medical entity? And
really?
people were like, I saw it maybe last week, and people were like, "Yeah, we're not afraid. We want to get on with life, so let's do it." So it's interesting even how people view it.
Mhm.
But some people were just like, "Bring it on." But I
But I
just
think,
think it's too soon.
but I think that goes back to what Jonathan Smith said last week when he was on, right? Jonathan Smith said that when we look at places like China and South Korea, those are places where they have less freedoms, I guess. So it's easier to say things like, to lock down and get people to comply. Whereas when people enjoy freedoms like they do in places in the West, it's harder to get them to comply. So it's going to take a bit longer to, I guess, suppress the virus and then even convince them to take a vaccination. Amanda Kelly says, maybe eventually forced to get it. Sean Smith says, just to play devil's advocates, do they ask people proof that they don't have AIDS? I mean,
I think it's a bit different though, because AIDS is not that easily transmitted. I think that's the difference. And it's not a
yeah,
pandemic through AIDS. I get your point, Sean. I
yeah.
totally get your point. But I do think in this case, it's a bit of apples and oranges.
I concur, Carla. I think you said it better than I could. It's a slight difference. Deborah Leah Joel Bell says, profits over saving lives. Is that really a discussion? Which part, where's the profit to?
Oh, because Robert said the balance between making money versus saving lives. So I think that's what she's referring to.
Got it. And I want to touch on a comment we just got from our guest in the background is HIV is a protected class by most human rights legislation and standards. And that's important. And let me just say this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Zakiya, but I know that when applying for residency in the US, I'm not quite sure you have to submit that anymore, or it's I want to say you have to get a lot of tests, and I think something to do with the UN or something. It's not. I'll have to check, but I think that's kind of what I'm going on the back end. She said you can ask about HIV because it is illegal to ask. You can't ask. They make you take a bunch of other tests. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Zakiya. See, look, our guests, even in backstage, they provide value. You feel me? Thank you so much for that. David Michael R. Wilson says, cheap to Florida, in my humble opinion. James Birch says, the Eastern education systems convince people to trust the government. I think that's on the back of what Jonathan Smith said as well. I mean, is it trust or fear, though? Serious question. Renee, Carla.
I'm having some difficulty answering this question. I will not get a vaccination outright, but I may need to travel. I'm really confused. I hope it doesn't go that far.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm there with her.
But then on the flip side, look at the last newscast I did when we were talking about the positives in Bermuda and how it seemed like the transmissions were coming in through a certain flight. It kind of makes you think, well, maybe people should be vaccinated because somewhere in there they're catching it in transit. So it's a lot to digest. And I think most of us who are not so keen to do it right away may have our necks pressed up against the wall when we have to take the decision.
Yeah, interesting times. I mean, just getting back to her comment is, and that's why it's hard for me to answer this question. And like the scenario I gave you about your sons, I think where we can all take some comfort. This is where we can all take some comfort. Number one, we're not gonna be able to get the vaccination anytime soon because isn't it frontline workers that go first and then the most vulnerable?
No, but I told you, even here in the UK, they're talking about students as early as November. They aren't essential or frontline.
Oh, so that may be US then. I believe here it's going to be healthcare workers, like frontline workers, healthcare workers, and the most vulnerable, like if you have a existing condition,
Elderly.
and the elderly. But how will they pump out enough testing time for November? That's the part that I don't get. Like, I mean, quality, quantity, that thing.
Risk. That's all I hear. But then it's the kid. What about that child that's been in their room, in isolation because classes are online and they want to go home and see mom and dad, and the only way to do that is to get a needle? Like it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary.
Well, we will be watching this and discussing it with you all closely. Again, that was just a report that came from Billboard, as stated that it's not anything final, but they were discussing plans. Ticketmaster, I'm sure if you've ever attended a concert or even a sporting event, you've probably used Ticketmaster across the world, and they are discussing plans that would require patrons to provide either proof of a COVID-19 vaccination or recent negative COVID-19 test to gain entry to a concert. Again, it's just being discussed. It's not final. Let's go through a few comments before we jump to Carla for the news. Lola says, trusting the government? Nope. It's more being backed into a corner, sadly. James Burt says the Bermuda travel authorization and guest worker certificates will probably adapt when vaccinations are widely available. Interesting to have vaccination or negative tests. Interesting there. Lola also says it was suggested for now, not mandated. Correct. Yes. We have to say that. It's been discussed. Mia Hartman says, I have come to the conclusion that I'll be stuck on the rock should the vaccination become mandatory. It's a nope for me. And there are a lot of people that are going to feel that way, right? Carla, you ready for the news?
I am.
All right, let's go to Carla, see what she's got for us. And don't forget, folks, make sure you share the link for this show. This is one of the most important conversations we've had recently, as we have Laurie Shiell of the Center Against Abuse, as well as Zakiya Johnson-Lord from Alt Bermuda, coming on to discuss the abuse of LGBTQ plus people. All right.
New York has introduced new restrictions aimed at curbing coronavirus, with Mayor Bill de Blasio warning it was the city's last chance to stop a second wave. Bars, restaurants, and gyms must close at 10 p.m., and people can only meet in groups of 10 or less. The U.S. is seeing a surge in coronavirus. A record 65,368 Americans were in hospital as of yesterday. The COVID Tracking Project also reported a record 144,270 new cases. An average of over 900 people a day are now dying with the disease. More than 1 million new cases in November pushed the total confirmed cases to over 10 million nationally, with 233,080 deaths so far. President-elect Joe Biden has picked veteran political operative Ron Klain to be his White House chief of staff. Mr. Klain has served to top aide to Mr. Biden since the 1980s in the Senate, and later when he was vice president, and also a senior White House aide to Barack Obama and chief of staff to Vice President Al Gore. The White House chief of staff, who manages the president's daily schedule and is often described as his gatekeeper, is a political appointee who does not require confirmation from the Senate. In news out of the UK, an NHS health advisor has quit her call center job and has become a figurehead for the COVID-19 conspiracy movement. It has emerged. Louise Hampton resigned from Care UK, a major provider for the 111 service, after a video of her describing an award for her work during the pandemic as a certificate of BS went viral. She has since continued to spread disputed claims via social media and is touring COVID-19 testing sites without wearing personal protective equipment in an effort to show they are empty. The anti-vaxxers' claims are contradicted by her employer, who pointed to a 400% peak in calls, and by official figures, which now shows that the number of coronavirus deaths in the UK has passed 50,000. Do you know what day it is today, Jamal? those books that we all love that just make us feel happy inside. There's a series. Can you guess what that is?
The dictionary.
There are some books that are written to see you through the darkest days, to help shine light through the ponderous, pitch black clouds of the sky that hangs overhead. The Chicken Soup for the Soul series books was produced explicitly for that purpose. Many are the readers who have had this book by their side as they do their best to live through the worst days of their life, and it's all thanks to Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen that these books came to light. Chicken Soup for the Soul Day celebrates the light that these two men have shed in the lives of others through this much-needed series. Turning to weather with a mix of sun and clouds, Bermuda's high today is expected to reach 77, 82 in Tampa, Florida, and 53 in Manchester, UK. On a programming note, it's Thursday, so you know what you should be doing tonight. Tuning into the full100radio.com for nighttime jams featuring some of your favorite romantic classics. That's your Daily Hour news break.
Did you say it's Chicken Soup Book Day?
Chicken Soup for the Soul. You never heard of Chicken Soup for the Soul? This series, and then they have Teen Chicken Soup for the Soul and for younger ones. You've never heard of that series, Jamel? Never?
Take a break and come back with our guest for the day. All right?
Okay, all righty.
Chickens for the Soul. What is...
Good day, Medical House Doris speaking. Can I help you?
Medical House is Bermuda's leading one-stop shop for healthcare. Bermuda's top doctors, dentists, care homes, and the hospital choose Medical House for a wide range of products.
Anything that we ask them to do, they come through.
These same professional quality products are available to you for home healthcare.
If we can use them, we definitely do so.
Medical House is best known for its uniforms and footwear. It also has restaurant uniforms that stand up to even the toughest shifts. If you're on your feet all day, Medical House has comfortable and stylish shoes that are also durable and easy to clean. Everyone needs some help cleaning up, and Medical House has got it. Leading-edge janitorial, facility, and maintenance supplies are all here. Medical House is on Millreach Lane in Pembroke, where there's private parking right outside the door. Call or visit Medical House today.
Recently, we've been re-examining the way we eat sweets as we live under the shadow of diabetes, a bona fide epidemic in Bermuda and abroad. All the makers of alternative sweeteners are striving to create that safety margin, and this month, we're featuring a heavyweight contender, Lakanto monk fruit sweetener, fighting the battle of the glycemic index. Originating in southern China, the unique monk fruit imparts sweetness without sucrose or fructose, resulting in the healthiest sugar alternative. Try Lakanto sugar-free golden, liquid, and classic monk fruit sweetener. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
Welcome back to the big show. Carla ZUILL, myself, JAMEL Hartman. It's the Daily Hour. Thanks again to Medical House Lindo's and Channel 82, where you can also watch the show if you have One Communications cable TV. Also along throughout social media, Facebook, YouTube. Let me know if you're watching on YouTube. I heard it was down last night as well. Twitter, Twitch. We are just trying to be as many places as possible, and the full100radio.com. Gonna let you know we have a little announcement we're gonna make at the end of this show. So make sure whatever you do, you tune into the end of this show. But without further ado, we have to bring in some important people. The reason that most people watch this show is because of the guest, right? So no one cares about calling. And we have some very important people joining us today. Zakiya Johnson-Lord and Laurie Shiell, welcome to the show.
Morning.
So happy you both. Thank you for taking the time. I know it's early, but you know, I'm just hopeful that when I wake up at 5 a.m. and pretend to go to the gym, and you know, everyone else will pretend to be happy and up for a couple hours as well, so that we can have a good conversation. So thank you.
Yes.
All right, so let's go straight to the conversation. Look, despite the current case going on in Bermuda right now, right, the case involving people's right to marry, has Bermuda made progress in terms of the LGBTQ plus area?
You're asking me? I'm assuming.
Either.
I think I appreciate that you started both with the marriage case, but also like move past it. I think it's an issue that we are having to fight, but we would prefer not to. I think we have made progress. It would be unfair to say we haven't. Just even given, I mean, I know that the Pride March isn't necessarily an indication of all this social progress, but I do think the fact that it was even able to happen is a note of something. I think the legal battles are one way of measuring progress, but certainly the ways in which families are more willing to engage around the topic, the ways in which we've seen everything from businesses to schools to human service organizations, even just shift some of their forms to be more inclusive, is just all those are markers of, I would say, success or move in the right direction.
The we're going to talk about abuse, but what kind of abuse is still happening towards LGBTQ plus people in Bermuda, where the Center Against Abuse need to step in, Laurie?
So what's happening is that people think that when it comes to abuse, it's just between a man and a woman, but actually abuse can happen between any type of partner, whether it's heterosexual partners or homosexual partners. And so therefore we understand that these areas in the LGBTQ community are happening. And so we reached out to Bermuda and we had that conversation with them, because we're not seeing the individuals who we know could possibly be in abusive relationships in the LGBTQ community coming through our doors. And so we had that conversation with Bermuda to talk to them about, okay, well, what's happening? Maybe it's just us. How can we push our services out there to let them know, and to let everyone know that our services are confidential, our services are not judgmental, and we are there to assist all victims of domestic abuse, whether it be physical, whether it be emotional, financial, and all the other areas and behaviors that happen under domestic abuse.
So what do you think needs to be done to stop abuse towards LGBTQ plus community in Bermuda?
If I can jump in, Carla, and thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful to also be in conversation with all you all. And Laurie has been such a wonderful partner for us. I think that the issue is more so just acknowledging, one, that it happens, like in Bermuda and elsewhere, like people are being subjected to emotional, physical, financial abuse. And if we don't talk about it, as we know, there was always a stereotype, even just amongst the heterosexual community, that you don't seek help. You certainly don't talk about things that happen behind closed doors. So I think the issue is not so much like what can we do to help the LGBT community, but just to all of us to widen our scope around the issues and to try to be working collectively to figure out what is it we can do to make people understand that if you are experiencing some form of abuse, there are places you can go. Right. And I think the question I want to answer is the barriers to access that I think the LGBT community are struggling with a little bit more. To Laurie's point, if you see domestic violence as something that just happens between a man and a woman, then you don't see yourself as a victim if you are in that position. And so therefore, you certainly don't think that the Center Against Abuse is a place you can go if you think it just treats women in heterosexual relationships. Does that make sense? So I think we're trying to broaden the conversation. And also, in all fairness, when there is less acceptance of who you choose to engage with by your friends, your family, your community, by your job, then you certainly don't have someone to tell, oh, so-and-so is not only in my in a same-sex relationship, but they're not that kind to me, or they take my paycheck, or, whatever the case may be. Is that I think it's layered, right? It's the barriers to access, and also the ways in which that there isn't always a widespread acceptance of same-sex partnerships that make the barriers even more and more challenging.
So that leads perfectly into my next question, because do you believe that the religious arguments that are often used against the idea of accepting people in the LGBTQ community play a role in abuse?
I do. Go ahead, Laurie.
Well, speaking as a Christian, I can say that my philosophy is that we should love everybody. And so while there are many things about many people I might not like, but that doesn't mean that I should not love them. I might not agree with it. That doesn't mean I should not love them. And so love covers everything that happens within our family, within our friend circle. And when you truly love somebody, then you are there for them no matter what. You're there for them, with them, and through whatever they are going. So whether you are have a different partner than me, that doesn't make a difference. That shouldn't make a difference in how I show my love to you, because my love's not about who your partner is. My love is about who you are and who I am, really. And so, therefore, we shouldn't even be having the conversation around, oh, well, I'm not going to assist you, or I don't want you in my circle because of who your partner is. You know, you should be in my circle because I'm a loving person and I want to spread that love with you. And if I see that you are hurting or in need of some type of assistance, that's what I'm here for. And that's even in the Bible where it talks about the Good Samaritan, just somebody reaching out to help their neighbor, no matter what, no matter if they look different from you, no matter if they act different from you, someone that is in need of help should be helped.
Now, I don't know if this is a far-fetched, but a question I have is, could perhaps the abuse be prevalent within that community because the frustration of even having to be a secret? Because like you said, how some people can't even come out. Have you found that that can be a source of abuse towards their partner?
If I could weigh in, I definitely and obviously read a lot of articles, and also I was a therapist before this, is that, there's this power wheel that domestic violence, intimate partner violence always talks about, right? And when you layer the LGBT issues on it, one of the ways in which someone has power over their partner is the outing factor. And I also know that isolation is a risk factor on anybody's assessment scale. And so when you talk about the layers of faith, the faith community often is a source of support for most people, right? People find that their faith, whether it's in a church community or just individual, is that prayer is a way that people cope. Community is a way people cope. And when the church is less accepting of the LGBT community, you take away one leg of a stool that most people have. So I would not say, so I think that is more the factor, that they don't have someone to lean on as much, right? You take that from them when you make them less available. So I think that's one of the sadder aspects, I think, of when people feel discriminated against. And then it's certainly the ways people threaten folks in same-sex partnerships of outing them. If I'm gonna put my hands on you, and if you tell somebody, I'm gonna tell them that you're gay, that's a real threat. That's a one that people will absolutely stay in the closet and stay in harmful relationships, because the fear of being outed is way worse than the fear of being hit.
Wow. Now, here in the UK, domestic abuse amongst the LGBTQ community is underreported by, they said between 60 and 80%, but it lines up with the national average of 79%. Are those numbers comparable in Bermuda?
I would like to think it's probably higher in Bermuda because our community is smaller. And as we started the segment off, we're still fighting for certain rights for certain communities. And so therefore, people aren't going to go to the police and say, look, I was hit by my partner. It's a male. One, because of what Zakiya said earlier, because it's outing myself. And two, because I may think that the police may not accept me in the first place and be saying, what you talking about that you were hit by a guy or another woman hit you? It's just too much information that you have to go through and too much judgment that a person has to go through. And so therefore, individuals just don't even go through this. They try their best to get out on their own.
So, and I'm sure, and Carla, I'm sure Laurie also knows there's a lot of underreporting by everybody. A lot of folks just don't. And something that Laurie and I talked about before, who doesn't report? Men. There are a lot of men in Bermuda that women are putting their hands on them. The people who we need to have a larger national conversation about the ways in which we engage with one another. And I think the LGBT community is a really good window to come through, because it somewhat turns the conversation on its head, because we're talking about people who aren't necessarily big guy, small woman. Oh no, she's vulnerable in that way. We're talking about other forms of vulnerability that I think the whole community could benefit from as we look at the ways in which we engage with one another, and the issues of privacy and people wanting to maintain some just level of pride, and so and we might be being harmed as a result of that. So I do think that it's underreported. I think a lot of abuse is underreported, and that the LGBT community in particular has additional elements of vulnerability.
You made me think of something real fast, Carla. I remember I actually had done a research paper because I spent years fighting something in Bermuda, and one of the challenges and things that we exposed in court was the abuse that was taking place. And throughout the studies the paper I had written, it actually stated what you were saying word for word, pretty much. Men are less likely, and one of the challenges in Bermuda was, and I don't want people to remember the actual situation of what I'm speaking of because I feel like this conversation is too important. But it has to be stated that if you had men in a position of power over other men, and that man who was being abused when I'd said something, they knew that this man would be like, oh, I mean, I had a boss say this to me. Oh, well, if he got touched, he's gay anyway. And so the fear of coming forward and saying that you were abused with that hanging over your head, it's like, I mean, you're confirming so much for me right now. But years ago, when we were saying this kind of stuff, oh, you're just crazy. Oh, no, this and that. It's amazing how everything comes together in time.
It's also interesting that the worst thing you could be is gay.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid. Oh my goodness, no way. That's like, you know what I mean? Like that's like, oh goodness, you would rather face abuse than have someone even think that you are engaged or interested or, would consider partner with someone of the same sex, which I think is also obviously a larger conversation. I mean, we've seen it in a host of areas where people like, they'll go to the mat, at that allegation. That's a nation over and the world over. That's I think that is also a conversation that people should have.
Like your murder.
Exactly.
It's no comparison.
Right. And it's so often that we as a community, and I speak about Bermuda, but even globally, you'll see this where we always victimize the victims. We never place the responsibility on the abuser. JAMEL, you're saying that, you're being said, or people were being called as, oh, they must be gay if they were touched. Well, how do I now become gay? Because I was touched. I didn't ask for that. Why am I now being labeled as gay? Although I'm the one reporting it, and why is it being seen as a bad thing? Even if I am gay, I did not ask to be touched. And so your role is to protect me, not to victimize me further as someone in a position of power.
Now, going back to what Zakiya said, because that was actually leading into another one of my questions. With heterosexual relationships, men underreport. It's just simple, right? In Bermuda, talking in the Bermuda context, do you find that gay men underreport compared to gay women? Are there any statistics or findings that point to that?
You talking to me or Laurie?
I'm like, not me.
I think there are statistics on that, and I do think that men underreport more. But I do think the variable that I've read about is people not wanting to make the community look bad. Is a really, that comes up in every report that you read. All the research comes up with the variable that continued to be the fact that the people didn't want to tell anybody was that, hey, people already look at the LGBT community with suspect, and so I didn't want to tell anybody. Or if someone presents more masculine, this idea that I'm supposed to take it is an issue in the lesbian community. And so it's those kind of variables that I think are playing into the reporting statistics. But there isn't a whole lot about like the men versus women reporting, but certainly women continue to underreport.
Now, Laurie, you had talked
Can I add to
about
that real quick? Sorry, Carla. From what I researched, I saw that individuals who were bisexual were the greatest percentage of individuals that did not report and were in more harmful relationships. I don't know why. Maybe that segment tends not to come out as being in the LGBTQ community, and so therefore they have the most to lose, but those that are in bisexual relationships tend to be in the most abusive and tend to be the most underreported.
Now, Laurie, you were talking about how some people, if they go to the police and how the police may react. Do you think that there should be, if there isn't, some sort of sensitivity training for police officers, medical officers who have to deal with people in the gay community who come for being abused, as opposed to?
Definitely. I mean, this is the whole reason why Bermuda exists, is to provide education on sensitivity training. And even myself and other organizations are receiving training via Bermuda in regards to understanding and being able to support individuals in the LGBT community, where we by ensure that our sensitivity is in a space where we are not offensive when we are dealing with individuals from this community. Because, of course, we all grew up, or when I say we, majority of us grew up with prejudices against the LGBT community. And so, therefore, we have to understand certain things and release certain things as well in order to best help someone from the community in that situation.
I'm smiling at Laurie's bisexual comment, because that's some good research. I completely forgot about it. Absolutely talks about that, and so that makes me, I'm thrilled about that. But I do think that the idea of training, and I would say more specifically, a lot of times we gender questions, and police being this similar, right? So we gender, hey, how's your husband, right? We oftentimes make assumptions about who someone is partnered with, who was the perpetrator of harm. Like, we really do ask such specific questions. Oftentimes we don't even notice it ourselves. I can remember working with this young person who was, gender nonconforming, queer young person. And they were a parent. And I remember saying something like, well, you can be a good mama. And they were like, I'm gonna be a good parent. And it stuck with me so much. The ways in which I didn't mean they were going to be a good mom or dad. I meant they were going to be a good parent. And it didn't matter what the gender was. And so to go back to your question about the police, is that the truth of the matter is the questions that any service organization needs to be asking needs to be about the person. Needs to be about the person that's doing the reporting, needs to be about, where were you harmed? What was the circumstances? Is there something we need to know right now that is putting you in greater risk? Is there someone we can call for you? And not asking like, well, do you have a boyfriend that we can call? Or, asking about different types of support as well. It's really a more simplistic question and a more available answer to a lot of things that we're asking, and also reminding ourselves that some things aren't our business. Just because you want to know doesn't mean you deserve to. Mm-hmm. And just because you have an observation of someone, right? Like, well, that person seems feminine, or she seems kind of masculine, or, she must have been the one doing the hidden. Those are the things that I think we would encourage folks to challenge and to step back from, and to really start to assess where those biases come from and what assumptions they lead to, and how it actually leads people more vulnerable, right? If you're a more masculine presenting woman, taller, thicker, maybe you play sports, and you are being harmed by somebody, you think you can call the police? Because they're going to assume it's you. They're not going to assume it's the other person who is, hitting you with your chest and scratching you with their nails. That's not what they're going to assume. And so it's those kinds of things that we need to feel as if the police understand that, like, who is, whatever questions they would ask in another scenario or regular incident happening, they need to try to be a little bit more neutral, because the assumption of their lack of neutrality may be contributing to people not being willing to report or call.
Indeed. Let's go to some questions. We have a question in the audience, Charles H. Jeffers, who says, if someone suspects abuse of a family member or friend, regardless of sexual orientation, can they call the hotline?
Yes, they can. They can call 297-8278, or they can call our office during business hours, 292-4366.
All right. And about resources, I know, Laurie, you mentioned that Bermuda, the whole purpose is education. Is this a resource that, like, it's pretty much just for the LGBTQ plus community that they can come to if they're facing any challenges in abuse? Like, how do they go about, what's the process?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
I think that in our case, as we're talking about domestic abuse, or even, abuse that involved young people, it's one of the reasons why we're working with the Center Against Abuse, with the Family Center, with Dr. Sandy, trying to ensure that the service providers that are already trusted in the community have the tools they need and are able to deal with the nuances, right? Like, that's the opportunity we hope to provide, is if we have trainers come and talk to our, wonderfully, beautifully trained clinicians, social workers, therapists, in Bermuda, right? Like not us taking them to a training where the conversation is more broad. We want to talk specifically about the ways in which it shows up in Bermuda, right? It shows up for kids on the bus that's got to go from Somerset to town. It shows up, right? Like it shows up in very specific ways. It shows up in the fact that they know that the therapist knows their mama. And so they make, it's very specific, right? It's like small town problems, big city money, right? Is that people are able to travel the world, we're able to travel this tiny island, we access a lot of things, yet the issues are still very personal. And so I think one of the reasons why, I mean, obviously people can contact our Bermuda if there's some specific thing they need from us, but we are not clinicians in our role as our Bermuda. We really are trying to partner with people who are already trained, already want to provide these services. And really we can help redirect them to say, you know what, it sounds like the person you're involved with, is being less than kind or is being abusive. You should really reach out to Laurie, and we can double down on the fact that, Laurie is providing confidential services. Her and her team are doing A, B, and C, right? And so our hope is that we can genuinely vouch for and speak to the partnerships that we have as almost like a calling card to our LGBT, siblings to say, we have talked with them, like they are good people. Go see them, like you'll be better for it. And so I think that's really the hope we have. And even coming on calls like this is to say, if you're looking at us, well, we're looking at Laurie. And so like maybe there's this a beautiful triangulation around like we can all be in community together, would be the hope.
As far as education, is there anything being done in schools from the Center Against Abuse angle in terms of educating younger people? Because I know, and just to use road safety, I know that it was a time when I actually had a lot of road safety people on my radio show, and they were even though the accidents involving a lot of people at the time were older people, they were focusing on educating the younger people so that when they grow older, they'll have more respect for the roads and per se. So are we focusing on younger people and their attitudes towards LGBTQ people?
We haven't started that training as yet, but our training basically is just about recognizing what abuse is. It doesn't go into if the person is your partner or if the person is your friend. When it comes to abuse and younger people, we just want them to understand what it is. Doesn't matter who it's coming from. Abuse is abuse. So what we look at is teaching about how to recognize, how to respond, and how to refer.
Got it.
And I just sorry. The thing I would say, which I'm a parent, my son is 6. We all can start with keep your hands to yourself. Like that. That's just the basics. And my son's a sizable young man, and I'm sure he's going to be up over 6'2". And my hope is that, one, you don't put your hands on nobody, and you know what else? You don't let other people put their hands on you. And it's really, again, neutral. Is that I'm not, I don't know who he's going to be partnered with or what kind of life he's going to be a part of. But son, unless you're in the wrestling ring, people don't need to be putting their hands on you. There's no need. And you certainly don't need to put your hands on nobody else. And you don't have a safe space here. In this home, if you're out there putting your hands on folks in anything other than a loving way. And I think that the idea that just because someone makes different choices from you does not make them less worthy of safety. I think that's the piece that we can talk to young people about. And that is both from how if someone walks in the world different from you, looks different from you, makes different choices from you, partners with folks that you may not choose to partner with, none of that removes them from the rights that are available to the heterosexual community or the able-bodied community, all of the above. I think it's a broader conversation that then gets to be applied to the LGBT community. It would be my hope for the next generation, that they're able to take the tools we give them and apply them in multiple ways.
I love how you said that, Zakiya. Like, that was a serious aha moment. I absolutely love how you said that.
Thank you.
So before we let you go, what do you want people to take away from conversations like this, if anything? The way our minds, well, especially my mind, I don't remember much things, but some people's minds, they're not going to remember it all. What do you want them to take away from this conversation in particular?
I know for me, for the Center Against Abuse, we just want you to understand that if you know of someone that is in trouble, who's in an abusive relationship, don't concern yourself with who their partner is, but concern yourself with this person is being harmed. Seek to assist them in any way you can. Contact us, see how you can assist them. Try to bring them in if you can. We are here for you. We are non-judgmental. We are confidential. And our goal is to maintain your safety and assist you with maintaining your safety. And so we just want to encourage our country to focus on the victim and not on victimizing the victim.
Zakiya?
I think, what I was saying earlier, I was keeping answer yourself, but also I hope that, some young person or some person is out there will see, this conversation with the four of us and, we'll see myself and Laurie having a conversation that is about just people in general and wanting the best for them and to understand that, Laurie identifies as straight. Laurie is like, has shared with us that she has Christian values, but at the same time, she's coming to the table and cares about our people. In Bermuda, we want people to understand we care about you. You are worthy. These services are for you. And I know it seems so elementary, but honestly, I don't know if that has been explicitly stated before. That just if something exists and you see the commercials, they are talking to you and that there's a space for you. And that when they go back and they Google it, they should find this conversation. Be like, oh, right, that's right. And if the friends see it, they can tell their LGBT friends, like, no, girl, I saw them. I think they're solid. I think they're safe. I think you should call. You want me to go with you? I think that's the goal, is for us to say, we're here and those people down there, they're all right, they're all right. That's the goal for me.
Indeed. Zakiya Johnson-Lord of Alt Bermuda, Laurie Shiell Smith of Center Against Abuse. Thank you both so much for having this conversation. And please know, Carla, don't say it, but I do say it to many people, not everybody. The door is open. As Laurie knows, who's been on her before, should you all want to come back and use this platform again.
Thank you for having us. I sincerely appreciate it.
No problem.
Have a great
Good
day,
to see you.
guys.
You too.
You too.
Right.
And
Take
thank
care.
you. Awesome conversation.
Thank you.
All right. Wonderful. I love these kinds of conversations where people can learn and grow. And the great thing about the Daily Hour is it doesn't go anywhere. So it's here for you to come back if you need to remember something. And for people who don't like to read, there's information being shared where you can listen to it and watch it. So thanks again to both of them.
You know what I really loved about this conversation? We talked about the gay community, which can sometimes be a very emotive subject. And I just loved how we were able to have such a powerful conversation where without a whole pile of trying to shove things down people's throats. I just loved how Zakiya said certain things, both of them, but Zakiya, just awesome. I really enjoyed it.
The approach is one of understanding, and I think that the way it's communicated is imperative to understanding. And so let's go to some comments. James Birch, great conversation. Thank you all for this. Nikki Michelle, hey sister, two champions of the rights of people. Thanks for the work, ladies. Be unnecessary in our community. Carla, John, thank you so much for having this important conversation. Jamaica Smith says, agreed that sensitivity training should be mandatory with regard to individuals handling reports of abuse. I even wanted to wonder about what's it called? HR people, people in human resources. Evelyn Pitt says, awesome conversation. Happy 24th birthday to your son. I believe it was Jafari. Happy birthday to
Happy birthday,
Evelyn. Karen Edwards Simmons, great conversation. Would like to see how sensitivity training for persons working with young people. Lola says the way it's communicated will surely foster space for people to come to you and ask for help. So thank you everyone for your contributions. Really appreciate you. And like I said, this purpose of this show is to improve our community one episode at a time, not necessarily agreeing, but understanding. We have a question today. But before we get to the daily play, remember I said I have some big news for you, right? So here's the big news. So there's going to be a new part of the Daily Hour, folks. And it's going to be called the Daily Hour Unfiltered. And so we're going to be doing this on Fridays. On Fridays, once the Daily Hour is over on the show, you're going to click over to the full100radio.com and you'll hear the Daily Hour Unfiltered with Carla and myself, where we will have unfiltered conversations about various topics. So it'll be very different from the conversations that you will have on the Daily Hour show. So you'll have to have the full100radio.com. That's where you'll be able to hear it. Tomorrow we'll give it a go, and tomorrow's show we're actually going to be talking about women's empowerment, as Carla is hosting a women's empowerment summit virtually for I think the 5th or 6th year this year. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow's show on the Daily Hour. Then on the Daily Hour Unfiltered, we'll be taking it a step deeper as the role men play in empowerment, if they play a role at all. So make sure, if you haven't already, you download the Full 100 Radio app, available for Apple and Android devices. All right. So those conversations will be unfiltered. To answer this question, will you have guests on Unfiltered? Not in the beginning. Not in the beginning. All right. So the daily play, folks, a very easy question. It's geography. I said to Carla, this is, just tell me if you agree after this question is asked and it's answered, if this is not the easiest question we've asked in the daily play. Here you go, Carla. What was the first capital of Bermuda?
If I got it wrong, it's because I'm tired. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. St. George's.
Didn't I tell you it's the easiest question you'd have? All right. So
That's insulting. That is insulting.
It's a follow-up question to it now.
Oh.
It's a follow-up question. What was the year it remained the capital until?
Let's see. Let me just take a guess. 1869.
Well, you got the 18 part, right?
Okay. Jamel, I was so, you set me up. 1874.
You have the 18 part right, but you're far off.
Okay, so 1812.
You're very close.
13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
All right. So what we're going to do here is give you a...
I need a half. Come on, man.
Here 18, we go. 18, 15.
I did. I said 13, 14, 15. I went up to 19.
No. You went through the alphabet, not even numbers, alphabet. So, yeah. So, Carla, basically, the St. George's was the first capital of Bermuda. Everyone's saying it was the easiest question I've ever asked you and that you've ever had to answer.
I didn't know that. I knew about St. George's, but you gave me blue brain. You got me all excited, thought I had it, and then you took it away.
Oh, no, you did get the question. It's geography. I just said, because it's so easy, I'm going to add a second part. See if you can get it.
Something else.
But crazy thing is, believe it or not, Carla, as easy as that question is, there are people who might not know that. And that's why I think it's important to have these questions. They're all fun and games, but my hope is that even if someone's embarrassed because they don't know, guess what? Unlike Carla, you can hide your embarrassment, and you know now. So when you go to the family barbecue, you can say, "So what's the first capital of St. George's?" What you got for inspiration, Carla?
You all know how to go, right? You all know. Your life won't start if you don't. Ezra Gregor. All
right. Your life won't start if you don't. I think that's very important for me every day. Get started, folks. Just get started. You'll never know if it'll work out or not if you don't get started. Any final words, Carla?
No, I just want to say thank you again to Zakiya and Laurie for that conversation. And I know, I don't even hope, I know it resonated with many. So I thank you, ladies. And I hope that each of us can become safe spaces for people who may not live the way that we do.
Indeed, indeed. On that note, we appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for making us part of your daily routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you tomorrow. Laurie, Zakiya, thank you. We will see you tomorrow.